Connecticut's more than $3 billion deficit can be felt across the state. Everyone is making tough decisions, including local school districts. Our next guest is part of a group that says the way teacher layoffs are carried out could directly impact the education students receive. Alex Johnson is the CEO of Connecticut Coalition for Achievement Now. Welcome back, Alex. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, let's talk about what the mission is of ConnCan. What is it that you're trying to do?
Sure. We're a statewide education reform advocacy organization, and we're working to ensure that we have great public schools for all students across the state. And we're doing that by building a movement of concerned citizens. We really believe we need to bring the public back into public education in order to get the schools that we all want for our kids.
What is the state of that right now?
Well, you know, unfortunately, Connecticut is the state that has the largest achievement gap in the country, the gap between different groups of students. And even our highest performing students are falling behind. The top 10% of students in Connecticut are about a year behind the top 10% of students in Massachusetts. So we have been resting on our laurels way too long, and other states have been changing policy. They've been moving ahead, and we have a lot of catching up to do.
So how do you think that we need to change the way we educate our students to really fill that void?
Well, there are a lot of things that we need to do at the state level. Most people think about education as their local schools, their local school board, and their local property taxes. That's what comes to mind. And of course, education ultimately is about a teacher and their students. But there are lots of things in state policy that other states are doing that we are not. Building data systems, things that sound very abstract, but that actually make a huge difference. The way we certify teachers. And on this issue of layoffs, the state policy that we have that influences the way districts do teacher layoffs. These things sound abstract, but when the pink slips go out, when we have a budget crisis like we do right now, the way our state law is set up directly impacts what happens in local districts.
In January, you launched the Get Smart Connecticut campaign. So how does that really pertain to teacher layoffs?
Sure. Well, the idea behind this campaign this year is that we need to get smart. You know, we've fallen behind. We need to really start focusing on smart state policies. And we focused on two issues in this campaign. Smart spending, getting school finance sorted out, and staffing smart. And in that category, we've talked a lot about long-term having a teacher evaluation system that's actually connected to how students are doing in the classroom, so that we have an understanding of which teachers are having their kids move along and which ones are not. And in the short term, doing something to end this practice of last in, first out layoffs. You know, it's very unfortunate in this economic climate.
Well, let's explain to everybody what that is. Last in, first out. What is that approach?
So that means that when you have to do layoffs, the last teacher hired is the first one that's let go. It means that seniority is the sole or the predominant factor in layoffs. And actually the Connecticut Education Association, the state's largest teachers union, has done a survey that indicates that about 3/4 of school districts across the state use seniority as either the sole or the primary factor in layoffs, which means you end up with last in, first out.
But you believe that it should be based on merit?
Yes. We believe that there are objective ways that you can measure teachers, that we can understand even right now, that there are some teachers that are chronically underperforming that will keep their jobs, while there are others, in some cases, teachers of the year who will be laid off. Nobody wants to see any teacher layoffs, but they're unavoidable in this climate. There are going to be hundreds, and next year we think the problem will be even worse.
Now, how does last in and first out really hurt the low-income student?
Well, again, we have a situation in many communities where some of the least senior teachers are concentrated in schools that have made dramatic turnarounds. Because I think, for example, of the McDonough School in Middletown, which has had phenomenal success, the principal there has brought together a group of teachers who are incredibly passionate and committed to this mission. And this school used to be one where kids were not performing very well. And part of what happened is he brought in a lot of newer teachers. And there are obviously some veterans there. But on average, the teachers in that school have about 6 or 7 less years seniority than teachers across the whole district. So when it comes time for layoffs, a school like that will suffer disproportionately if we use seniority, if we use this last in, first out policy.
Now, the teachers that were brought in, were these just teachers with a different attitude or different approach to teaching?
Well, look, you can find, I mean, experience matters. It's not that, we're not saying experience doesn't matter, but we do tend to see that in cases where we have a turnaround of a school with a concentration of kids who weren't succeeding, that a lot of times it is, in fact, a principal with a new vision who's attracting people who are younger in their careers, more ready to take a risk on a new leader. We do tend to see that, and clearly there are veteran teachers who are doing phenomenal work as well. But our point is that seniority, one way or the other, shouldn't be the factor.
But as you know, a lot of people say it has to have some factor in it because these people have worked so hard to get to the point where they are.
Sure. Well, I think actually the biggest concern that people raise about moving away from seniority, and the one that I think we need to pay the most attention to, is the worry that districts would target the most senior teachers for layoffs because they're also the most expensive. Nobody would want to see that happen. And in fact, we believe the legislature can take action in the next week to make sure that they give districts the flexibility they need without targeting those most senior teachers.
So are you looking at more like an evaluation for all teachers, basically?
Well, the long-term solution is an evaluation system in this state that links student achievement growth and actual learning of students with teachers so that we are actually able to say which teachers are most effective. In the short term, the legislature can take action. The Senate actually voted on an amendment the other night. It didn't pass, but we hope they're going to try again, where they would be allowing districts to begin layoffs with the group of teachers who've already been identified as underperforming, and then use seniority if they have to with everyone else.
And how do you think this legislative session will end for you?
Well, look, there's a week left, and anyone who follows the Connecticut legislature knows that a lot of things can happen in that last week. We've had thousands of folks reaching out and contacting legislators, and it's critical that people keep doing that. It's very important that folks hear from their constituents. We've got a petition on our website. There are lots of ways that people can get in touch.
I'm glad you mentioned that. If you want more information on ConnCan's Get Smart Connecticut campaign, call this number 203-772-4017, extension 19, or check them out on the web at getsmartconnecticut.org.
Thanks so
Alex,
much.
thanks so much.